Hey, Jared here from soundguitarlessons.com. Thanks for checking out this video. If you're interested in jazz guitar but find it challenging, then this series is going to be a huge help for you. This is part 1. Let's look at what happened there in that intro that you just heard. All of these chords went by, this D half diminished, this G7 with a flat 13, C minor 7, B7, B flat minor 7, A7, A flat major 7, all those chords. How do you address those kinds of chords when it's happening? It feels like we need a change, we need to do something special with all of them, and you can do that stuff. But the improvisation in the example you just heard, on top of all of those chords, was just the main tonal center. That's what I was using, aka the major scale. Wait, what? You can use the major scale over a bunch of chords changing and it sounds good? Yes, you absolutely can. Let's listen to that again. Welcome to Simplifying Jazz Guitar Part 1, the Real Music Framework and all 12 tonal centers. By the end of this video, you'll learn how it's possible to simplify jazz and sound great doing it without overthinking. And make sure you stay to the end because I will give you the first step to practicing this, and you can get a PDF download of the diagrams to work on as well. So here is what is holding guitarists back from truly jamming on the tunes they love in jazz and getting there quickly, like as quickly as possible. I've been teaching for over 20 years. I've seen all of the things that get people stuck. And for jazz guitar, this is the biggest thing. And what it is focusing on complexity before simplicity. Focusing on some nuanced exercise or some detailed lick or some theory concept before being able to actually play through a full tune. Just playing through a full tune, and I mean a complete arrangement of a tune. That means you can play the melody, you're comping, you're soloing, which means you're ready to play with people, which means you're ready to record a full version of it or whatever, which means you're playing real music and keeping it as simple as possible to do that first. So you really feel like you're playing the song, and then you can add all that stuff later, including stuff I teach. And I love detailed, heady theory stuff. I love targeting chord tones. I teach a lot of chord tone stuff. I love chromatic notes and, superimposing things. But where do we want to use all of that? We want to use it in playing real music. So first, let's get to playing a full version of a tune. And what I have developed now is a framework for getting there as quickly as possible. I call it my M.U.S.I.C framework for learning how to play complete versions of jazz tunes faster than any other approach. And I don't mean tempo faster, I mean getting there quickly, getting it off the ground, getting seriously, truly jamming faster than any other way. And then you can work on your sound forever from there because you have a place to apply it. You're playing real music. So here's the framework as an overview. The M stands for memorize the melody, or sometimes I say melodize. You want to melodize. You want to know the melody so well because the melody is the song. The melody is the tune, and it does wonders for how you play over it, for keeping you from getting lost in the form, which is another step in the framework. And it's the beauty of the song. You want to know the melody really, really well inside and out. There are many ways to do that, but it makes sense, right? Let's know the melody. Step 2 is the U step, and that is untangle the chords. This is simply that we want to be able to play all the chords with the simplest voicings possible so nothing gets us hung up. And you can add complex voicings later, but use the simplest voicings possible for every chord that works and counts as a complete sound for that chord. And then we are able to play any jazz chord with very few shapes. I actually teach this in other places. That is the untangle the chords step. The third step is the S in M.U.S.I.C in this framework, and it is simplify the scales. And this is the step we're going to focus on in this series, and in this video I'll give you the first thing to do to work towards this step, because this is the most mystifying. What scales do you use to play over when you're improvising? How do you improvise over a tune? It is so challenging to get into, and there's so many ways to do it. The simplest way we want to do first is we want to play in the tonal center of whatever tonal center that a tune happens to be in at any given time. It can change, or some of them change more than others. We're going to simplify the scales, simplify them as much as possible. So you're just playing in the overall tonal center during any part of a song and improvise with that. We'll come back to this in a second because it's what we're going to focus on. Step 4 is the I, and it is ingrain or internalize the form of the tune. This is absolutely critical. We need to do whatever it takes to not get lost. If you know exactly where you are in the form, you can play anything or not play and you're fine. You can come in anytime, and getting lost is the biggest hiccup that happens after we work through some of these other things. We need to just know where we are in the form. So internalizing where we are in the form. There are ways to work on that, which I'll talk about in other places and other times. And then the 5th step is C. Obviously, this one is very important. The C stands for communicate. And this is where we put the expression in. This is where we work on our feel and our tone and our dynamics, and even more importantly, our phrasing. So we're actually saying ideas. And this is where we add chromatic notes. Yes, you can play in the tonal center, which means you're just playing with major scales only. So really it's like a single scale approach. One scale, the major scale. Yes, you have to change keys, but it's the major scale. And then you can use chromatic notes to sound quite sophisticated, or just play in between, play out, play in, stuff like that. So that's part of the communicate part. And of course, part of the communicate step is to play full, complete versions and arrangements of the tune. That just means you're actually playing through and playing the melody and comping and soloing and then playing the melody again in your practice time with backing tracks or whatever you're using. And that's the type of version of a tune that you'd play at a gig or play on a recording or perform for your friends and family, right? You want to play complete versions. So that is that final step, that is communicate. We add the expression in, we add the phrasing in, we play full versions of the tune. And then we are there. We are musicians. We are playing real music. We are truly doing it. And you can work on your sound for the rest of your life from there. You can get whatever John Coltrane lick or whatever Pat Martino style sound, or you can infuse to your heart's desire, whatever you want from there. But if you're playing real music first, then you have a place to apply those things. You can go work on some crazy theory concept and actually use it right away because you're playing through a full version of the tune. So that is the framework, and that is the premise. Now let's go into that 3rd step, the S step, the simplify the scale step, and talk about the tonal center approach, which means we're just using the major scale. Now I call it the tonal center approach because I'm not thinking of it as major keys or the major scale. I'm thinking of it as a collection of notes that happens to be the major scale, but really it's representing the entire tonal center where a bunch of chords could be coming from. So that's why it's the tonal center approach and not necessarily just playing major all the time. It doesn't have to sound major. It's just a collection of notes. In My Funny Valentine, in the intro, that little sample I played, it's mostly a C minor sound during a lot of that song. And I'm just thinking in the E flat major collection of notes that is the tonal center of the entire tune. And on that tune in particular, you can play that through the entire song. And other songs, you have to change keys, which we'll talk about in a second. So here's the big thing I want to actually give you after that overview in this lesson, which is that you can play any tonal center within 3 frets, okay? Within 3 fret positions on the guitar. To play in a position means your first finger is lined up with that fret. So right now I'm in the 4th position, 5th position, 6th position. But in those 3 fret positions, I can play every single tonal center, all 12 keys, all 12 major scales in how I'm kind of framing it for this method, memorizing all the major scales, being able to play any of them and switch to any of them within 3 frets. And you can imagine how useful this is because you want to be able to play any tune. You want to go to the tonal center that tune needs at any given moment. And you don't want to jump around the guitar. You want to connect your ideas together. So you want to be able to do all of that within 3 fret positions. So the first thing to do for simplifying the scales is to memorize all your scales and practice them, all of the tonal centers, within the 3 fret positions that you can do them in. So that is exactly what I'm going to demonstrate now quickly and show you the diagrams for, and you can have a PDF of it as well. We want to practice these through the circle of fourths So we're going to start on C, then we're going to go up a fourth to F, then up a fourth to B flat, except on the guitar, you can go down to here, and I'll come back to talking about the roots in a second. But here's that first one, C major. And I'm playing it as the lowest note to the highest note and back because I'm thinking of it as a tonal center collection of notes and not a major sound. If you want it to make sure you get used to where the root is, you can do the root to root approach where you pause and repeat roots, which I've taught in other places. But for this, I'm just trying to be able to play them as a collection of notes because in a tune, when the tonal center changes, you don't want to jump to the root. You want to switch to the correct collection of notes wherever you happen to be. So you're just seeing it that way. So again, this is the beginning of this. Let's all know all of our major scales through 3 fret positions. Okay, that was C major. Next scale would be F major. The root is here, playing the full collection. That's through the circle of fourths. The next scale through the circle of fourths is B flat major. Here's that one. And we've done 3 scale shapes so far, and the fourth one is going to be E flat major, and there are only 5. There are only 5 scale shapes to learn. Okay, so we think of that as, okay, that's the E flat major scale. Here's the root of that tonal center right there if you're thinking of it as the major scale, which I am, and that's how I recommend doing it. Okay, that's the 4th shape, and there's only one more shape, and then they just repeat, and you apply the roots to different places. Here's the note A flat, that's the red note in the diagram, and here's the full shape. Okay, that's it. Now, next one in the circle of fourths is D flat. D flat root is right here, and the physical shape is the same as the first one we did, the same as the C major shape. Okay, and then we're going to go to the next one in the circle of fourths, and that is G flat major, same one as F, it's just up a half step. Okay, the next one is B major. This is the same one we did as B flat, up a half step. Even if you already know all these scale forms, doing it through the circle of fourths like this in one position is fantastic. I mean, I knew all these for years before I started doing it this way, sticking to one position through the circle of fourths, knowing all of those physical shapes equally well, being able to get to them all, switching to them anytime. The next key in the circle of fourths after B, up another fourth, is E. Now this is the one place where if you're going through the circle of fourths, the position switches quite a bit. You go from 6th position, where B major is, to the 4th position, where E major is. And that's just because if you actually kept going this way and played the next over E major scale shape, well, that next over E major scale shape's the same one we did on E flat, for example. It shifts into 7th fret position. Oh, so now we're out of our zone. We have now expanded into 4 fret positions. We're trying to keep everything as tight as possible. So from B to E, we have this shift. And so we go back to E, and then we're in the 4th fret position. Here's E major. We're almost done. We'll finish this off here. The next one after E is A. That's the exact same physical shape we used on B flat and on B. So they're repeating quite a bit. The next scale form, the next key center is D, and this is going to be the same physical shape we used on E flat. Here's D. And the next one is G, and this is the last one. The root is here, the lowest root is there on the guitar fretboard, and A flat was here. This is the same physical shape we did for A flat. This is the shape most people neglect the most often because the root is on the 4th string. The lowest root is on the 4th string. People often neglect this one. Don't neglect this one. That's why it's part of the system. You'll get used to it just like all the others. That's all of them. It might feel like a lot in some ways, but hasn't it simplified quite a bit rather than some hodgepodge of all these different scales and all these different keys, and you know some of them and you don't know some of them, and you're not putting everything in one position. Well, it's just key centers, it's just major scales, and it's just here in these three places. And the starting point is to be able to go through the circle of fourths like that, and you'll start to see them and play them up and down, improvise with them, know them well, have them memorized, know what they are. And then when a key center comes up in a tune, you can have that ready to go in your hands. And you can do that with these shapes, with these major scale shapes on any tune. And that's what I'll demonstrate more of in the next videos in this series. A little tip for finding the roots of these to get into this is you want to start on C and play through the lowest roots of each of those. And those are what you're going to visualize and base your scales off of, kind of build the scale forms off. So that's the lowest root in C, lowest root in F, lowest root in B flat, etc. through that system in the circle of fourths with those scale forms that fit in those 3 fret positions. Now let me leave you with this, something called Gauls Law. Perhaps you've heard of it. The quote is, "A complex system that works is invariably found to have evolved from a simple system that worked." Okay, that is from a systematics theory by John Gall. And I've heard this mentioned before and I found it fascinating, so I looked into it, and it absolutely applies here. What is the simplest way that we can achieve our goal of playing music, playing jazz, improvising on a tune, playing all the chords, truly jamming, getting into that jam session sooner than later, or, your version of your goal, have that in your mind. You want to perform for your kids or your spouse or your friends who say, "Hey, you play guitar. I know you're practicing guitar. Can you play something for me?" Wouldn't it be cool to have a full version of a tune to actually play through, or send them a little recording, text it to them or something like that? What's the simplest thing we can do to get there so it doesn't feel like, oh, maybe 3 years from now you can hear me? No, let's do the simplest way, which is tonal centers, the major scale structures, and that's just the improvisation part. We want to play the melody, we want to play the chords, we want to play a full version, but Gauls' law applies here. The simple system starts first, and then I already said this, but you can do anything you want after that. You can apply all of the crazy exercises and details, and when you learn some fun extended theory concept that you want to do, great, you get to apply it to something you're doing on a tune already, which is actually playing through the tune. Okay. Now, what about changing tonal centers? Since the example I played at the beginning on My Funny Valentine, I said you can use that one scale form, the E flat, on the whole thing. And then it's, still not easy, but it's simple. And you got to have phrasing. You have to have a feel that you like, and you have to try to get to sounding like you want to sound. And if you can't sound good doing that and feel good about it, adding more complexity is not going to make you sound good, right? So yes, we're going to work on phrasing and all of that. But what about the tunes that do indeed change keys? Because tons of them do. Well, in the next video in this series, in part 2, I have truly a fail-proof, step-by-step, baby steps way of working through a tune, even a tune that changes keys a ton. How to practice changing those keys in these positions and improvising with them as the keys change. And it sounds phenomenal. It really sounds like you're following the form of the tune and the key changes. And so we're going to do that in part 2. You can download the PDF of all of the diagrams of the scales through the circle of fourths, and you can get part 2 of this series by going to soundguitarlessons.com/simplify. And that will take you to a page with this video and the downloads and the other videos in this series. So go to there, soundguitarlessons.com/simplify, and please, please, please send me a message. Send me just a quick yes. Send me just a quick thumbs up emoji or anything at all. Doesn't need to take much of your time. If I sent you an email that got you to this video, reply to that email, or you can leave a comment below and just say yes if this is exciting for you, if this feels like the thing you need, if you liked this lesson, if you benefited from it, and if you feel like you're more optimistic now because of it, please let me know. I put a lot of effort into making these videos and strategizing on all of this stuff, and it really helps me feel connected to you and feel like I am on the right track and accomplishing my mission. So I can't wait to hear from you, and I can't wait to see you in part 2.